Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. Tonight we have 5 stories from the internet. I hope you all enjoy them. If you do, please be sure to drop a like rating. It helps out the channel so much, and I'd really appreciate it. Subscribing if you are new is also very much appreciated, as I am trying to reach 125,000 subscribers, and we're getting pretty close. I'm also posting a ton at the moment, so if you're at all interested in that, subscribing and turning on notifications is the best way to not miss any new content. Anyways, sit back, do whatever it is that you do to relax, and as always, I hope you all have a great night. I haven't talked about this in years, not even to my therapist, but I'm writing it down now because last night, at 2:12 a.m., I heard the knock again. Same rhythm, same pause. The same sick feeling crawling up the back of my throat. I used to think it was a demon. I know how that sounds. But when you're a kid, there are things you just know without proof. You don't question why your closet makes you nauseous, or why the attic door feels like it's breathing. You just know something's wrong. And something was very wrong in that house. We moved in when I was 9, old Victorian at the edge of a dead-end street. Sloped floors, wallpaper like dried blood. My mom called it a fresh start. She'd just gotten serious with a new boyfriend, Rick. He helped pay for the place but stayed in the city at first. So for a while, it was just me and her. The first night I couldn't sleep. Normal new house stuff, I thought, until I heard it. Knock. Just one, soft. Like someone gently tapped their knuckle against my door. I sat up in bed listening hard. Knock, knock, knock. 3 more, spaced out, deliberate. Then silence. I got up and opened the door. The hallway was empty. I asked my mom in the morning if she'd checked on me. She said no. She looked tired. Her hands were shaking when she poured her coffee. I noticed a red mark on her neck. She said it was a bug bite. That night, I stacked books against the door just in case. The knocking came again, same time, around 2 a.m. But this time it didn't stop. It turned into scraping, like nails dragging against the door, then breathing, wet and slow, right up against the wood. I heard it say something I didn't understand. Too low, too garbled. And then I smelled it. Rot, like something dead had been stuffed under the floorboards. I didn't sleep, just stared at the door, flashlight clutched tight. In the morning, my mom had a bruise on her arm, purple and angry, like someone had grabbed her too hard. She said she tripped on the stairs. She wouldn't meet my eyes when she said it. It kept happening. Some nights it tried the doorknob. Other nights I'd hear it crawl across the hall. And once I heard crying, soft, broken sobs, like someone trying not to be heard. Sometimes it came for me. Sometimes it didn't. But someone always got hurt. The worst was when I forgot to block the door. I was half asleep when I heard the slow creak of it opening. I froze, pulled the covers over my head. Something stepped into the room. It didn't walk right. Too heavy, too slow. The mattress dipped beside me. And it breathed right in my face. Hot, sour, and wrong. Then finally it left. In the morning I had scratches across my back, through my shirt. I didn't tell my mom. She already looked like she was unraveling. Eventually Rick moved in, just showed up one day with his bags, and that looked like he belonged there all along. The weird part, the knocking stopped, but the house didn't feel safer. It felt worse, colder, heavier. And my mom seemed even more withdrawn. I started having dreams, of something watching me from the hallway, tall and thin with no face, just a mouthful of too many teeth. Sometimes I woke up with bruises, sometimes with dirt under my nails. Once I woke up outside, lying on the porch, barefoot. My hands were bleeding. I told my mom we had to leave. She cried, said she'd find a way. That night, she locked her bedroom door, and I waited. 2:09 a.m. Footsteps. They didn't stop outside my door this time. They kept going, toward hers. I heard her murmur something, confused, half asleep. Rick? Then a crash, and a scream, then silence. I ran to her room. The door was open just enough. Inside, in the dark, something was crouched over her. Tall, wrong. It held her down, hands wrapped around her wrists. She was fighting, kicking, sobbing. And then it turned to me and grinned. I didn't think. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed the biggest knife I could find. When I came back, it was still on top of her. I screamed, ran forward, and drove the blade into its back. Again and again and again, until it slumped to the floor. My mom was screaming, screaming at me. I looked down. It wasn't a monster. No claws, no fangs. Just a man. Just Rick. His face was caved in, one eye open, one shut. Lips split like someone had tried to tear the truth out of them. The police came, said it was self-defense, said I saved her, but she never looked at me again. We moved out of the house. She never spoke to me after that. Years later, I still don't sleep with the door open. I live alone now. 1-bedroom apartment, 3rd floor. No creaks, no attic, no shadows in the hallway. Still, last night I woke up at 2:12 a.m. Knock, 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 tap, and a voice behind the door. Not growling, not whispering, just tired. Why? Edit. This morning I found something under my bed. My old flashlight. Cracked. The one I used to keep under my pillow. Still faintly glowing. And it smells like cigarette smoke. My wife, Jennifer, died earlier this year. It feels like it happened yesterday. Not because of my memory of that day, but because I don't think I have truly lived a day since it happened. It's funny how much can change in a day. The morning had been like any other. Jennifer was feeding our newborn, Molly, and I was humming along to the ink spots as I made us a breakfast omelet. Life was perfect. Yet, as soon as Jennifer took a ponderous look at her hands and remarked how cold they were, it signified the end to my idyllic life. 24 hours later, I held one of those cold, lifeless hands, as a doctor explained the spread and effect of sepsis. I learned a few hard lessons that day. I don't deal well with pity. I don't deal well with social gatherings. And I don't deal well financially. I hadn't realized how much I had relied on Jennifer for my well-being. Every social occasion felt suffocating, and I quickly realized my low salary as a data analyst was not enough to afford the mortgage payments our suburban new build had. When Jennifer's father threw a lifeline in offering use of his rarely used holiday home in northern Brittany, I gladly accepted. I couldn't wait to leave those pitying looks behind. It was only when me and Molly arrived at the house did I feel the first pang of apprehension. I knew the house was old, maybe 3 or 4 centuries by what Jennifer's father had said, but it looked almost medieval. The roof was sound but concaved like a lens. The chimneys at either side of the building seemed to be desperately clinging on to the main structure. These chimneys led to the only heating source of the house, two grand fireplaces, held aloft by large slabs of stone, which still bared the pickaxe marks from which it had been chiseled. The upper floor was supported by great beams of oak. Although still sturdy, they wore the scars of centuries of woodworm spots. Even after thorough cleaning, the creaky upstairs floorboards would still patter the lower floor with dust when walked upon. Yet, for its quirks, it felt almost content. The small village the house was situated in was incredibly quiet, meaning me and Molly were rarely disturbed. One might have guessed by the multitude of shuttered windows that it was a ghost town, yet the spell would be broken by the hourly bells of the central church, which seemed to act an auditory timetable for the locals who would filter out of their homes to frequent the boulangerie or tabak in their daily rituals. In my brief visits out of the home, I noticed how aged the population was. I couldn't remember ever seeing anyone younger than their 30s. Not that I had much interaction with them. I couldn't even speak French, let alone Breton, and they always seemed to eye me with caution. Coincidentally, the only English-speaking person in the village was my neighbor, an old lady named Dorian, who looked almost as ancient as the building itself lived in the house adjacent. Our first interaction had been odd. I'd just returned from the corner shop, Molly strapped to my front, and shopping bag in hand, when as I put the keys in the door, I heard the clip-clop of wood on stone. I turned to face an old woman wearing clogs, donning a black and white motley dress, with a frilly hat to match. Before I had a chance to greet her, she pointed a gnarled finger at Molly and in a thick Breton accent croaked, "Is the baby yours?" "Yes, she is. Her name is Molly," I replied cautiously. "I didn't just find her now." I regretted my attempt at joke, as Dorian's face furrowed into a stern glare. "This is no place for a child," she said coldly. "This house?" I said, gesturing at the building. "It looks a bit shabby from the outside, but it's actually quite cozy on the inside, and—" Dorian cut me off by wagging her finger. No, this place is too dangerous for the child. We are too close to the chaos." For a moment I was confused as to what she meant, but then I realized she was referencing the valley that bordered the west side of the village. The Bretons use the word chaos to describe an area of literal, primordial, geological chaos, the chaos next to the village. Like many others in Brittany, is a winding valley filled with immense boulders and strange formations. These great rocks, some being larger than houses, are said to have been tumbled and shifted into place after great calamities. The ancient nature of these valleys has spawned countless myths of spirits and creatures who have roamed these areas before the age of man. This mystique, however, had always been lost on me. "I wouldn't worry. I don't think Molly here is going to be wandering near those rocks anytime soon," I said, stroking her hair. As she began to stir, Dorian only shook her head. "Her mother should be watchful. It's not what one wanders in that one should worry, but what wanders out." Before I could query what she meant, Molly began to cry. "Her mother is not with us anymore," I said quickly, feeling a sudden pang of anguish. "I better get in and feed this one. It was nice to meet you." We exchanged names and I made up my way inside. As I unpacked my shopping and began mixing up some baby formula, I felt my grief creep back into my psyche. I had been in Brittany 3 months, and I realized I hadn't thought of Jennifer at all this last week. Being so busy with work and taking care of Molly, I realized I hadn't had much time to think. Now I was left alone with my thoughts. I remembered how greatly I missed her. The small things that were absent hurt the most. The way I would catch her in a jumping embrace when she returned from work, the smell of her on my pillows, and the way she would sing Molly asleep. These small things that together formed a love for a person. Now all I am left with is a memory. Molly's cries woke me from my mournful trance. "It's okay. Daddy is here," I said softly as I lifted the bottle to her mouth for her to feed. "What am I going to do, Molly?" I whispered as her mother's green eyes peered into mine, sighed and pulled her close to me. "At least I'll always have you." As if feeling my torment, Molly giggled and gave me one big toothless smile. I smiled back. "Okay, you little rascal. Time for bed. Daddy has some more work to do." I took Molly up to my bedroom, to her cot, which was nestled in the corner by the window. "Sleep well, my little angel." I kissed her on the forehead and tucked her in. Downstairs in the sitting room, I kindled a fire, opened up my laptop, and returned to my work. I don't know how much time passed until I heard that first bump. I'd been wearing headphones, so I don't know whether I had misheard at first. Then another, and another. I shot to my feet as I heard Molly begin to wail. I heard what sounded like frantic footsteps echoing from upstairs. "Molly?" I shouted as I began bolting up the staircase and into the bedroom. I had expected something, anything, but as I burst into the room, there was Molly, sound asleep in her cot. Had I imagined it? I stood in confusion as I felt a sudden breeze draft blow through the room. The window next to Molly's bed was slightly ajar. I was sure it hadn't been opened before. A low rumble of thunder emanated from the window. Rain began to patter quietly on the tiled roof. A strange tension filled me. I had never believed in ghosts, but this felt like something that a person who did believe in them would freak out about. Either way, whether it was a ghost or a rat, I suddenly felt very uncomfortable leaving Molly alone in that room. I carefully scooped Molly up from her cot and carried her back downstairs. She stirred as I entered the sitting room, and on sight of the baby milk bottle left on the side, she began incessantly reaching towards it. "Still hungry, are we?" I said to Molly as I laid her in the small crib by the sofa. "Okay, just one more then." I hurried to the kitchen to create another mix. As I re-entered the sitting room, I could see her eyes were locked on the bottle with a strange intensity. "Wow, you really like this stuff, huh?" I reached down to feed her the bottle, but she practically snatched it away from me with dexterity I'd never seen before, and began chugging the bottle down. "Whoa, settle down there, sweetie. You'll get a bad tummy." I tried to pull the bottle away, but she had a vice-like grip on the bottle. In sheer disbelief, I watched as the entire bottle's contents disappear in 10 seconds. As soon as she finished, she let out a small burp and threw the bottle from her crib. "Jesus Christ, Molly. Where did that come from?" I said in shock. I had never seen Molly act such a way. Or any baby, for a matter of fact. Molly's green eyes locked with mine. Another rumble of thunder permeated through the room. A wave of uncanniness washed over me. Something seemed off. Molly seemed off. I wasn't sure whether it was the strangeness of the evening that had got to me, but the way she looked at me so intently almost unnerved me. As if trying to make use of the sudden attention, Molly began mumbling. Her first word? Molly had never attempted speech like this before. My unease began dissipating as I realized I was about to bear witness to a wonderful moment. "What is it, Molly? Daddy is listening," I whispered, worrying any noise would pop this bubble of discovery. Molly mumbled, the words almost breaking free. "Yes, Molly?" I said in anticipation.
More.
Molly said with a certain deliberation. A laugh escaped my breath. More? Molly, my angel. You have just had a whole bottle. Molly's brows furrowed as if understanding.
More.
She repeated with a sterner tone. No, Molly, it's past your bedtime already. You don't need another bottle, I said, the concern creeping back into my voice. More, now, Molly screamed as the first crack of lightning illuminated the room. She began flailing around manically in her crib. For a moment I just sat there in disbelief. Molly was only 10 months old. It wasn't impossible for her to begin speaking at this age, but her comprehension of my words felt just as unnatural as her sudden appetite. Molly also had never had a tantrum like this before. Sure, she had cried and gotten upset, but she had never screamed bloody murder like this before. I conceded. I had tried to get her to stop by speaking to her, gently rocking her, even singing to her, but still she screamed, demanding to be fed. I felt defeated as I began mixing her another bottle. Jennifer would have been able to remedy this, I thought to myself. But a rapping at the door broke me from my pitiful trance. It was Dorian, dressed in a white nightgown and fluffy slippers which were slowly getting drenched by the intensifying rain. With a stony scowl plastered across her face, spoke to me while incessantly pointing her finger inside. Your child has kept me up this last hour. Oh, God. Dorian, I'm sorry, I sputtered out. It's Molly. I don't know what has gotten into her. She won't stop eating and cry. Dorian pushed past me before I could finish. Where is she? She demanded. Let me have a look at her. She didn't have to ask. She simply followed the sound of the wailing. I quickly followed, baby bottle in hand. She's never been this food manic before, I said, handing the bottle to Molly, which quickly silenced her screaming. This has just begun tonight, Dorian said, concern beginning to show in her face. Yes, and she even spoke her first words, only to ask for more food. I said as Molly began to polish off the last of the bottle. Dorian just shook her head. I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, she began, then paused. Dorian took one look at Molly discarding her third bottle, and then looked up at me. This is not your child, she said plainly. What the hell are you talking about? I said in astonishment. Children are rare here. They are sought after, craved by things often not human. Dorian leaned down and picked up Molly, who had begun to cry again. This is Jeddan handiwork. I know many mothers who notice too late or refuse to accept. Months go by, food depletes, yet the baby has not grown. She looked down at Molly, who had begun to properly wail again. She'll be deep within the chaos now. I did try to warn you. She sighed. A sudden anger had begun to well in me. That is my child you are holding. I don't know this, Jeddan, and I don't like how you refer to her. Give her back to me. I outstretched my arms expectantly. You don't believe me? Dorian chortled. Look, I'll show you. She suddenly began squeezing her thumb hard on Molly's temple. She began to scream even louder. I returned that scream and lunged towards her, but before I could reach her, I heard the audible pop of Molly's eye leaving her skull. Yet what dropped to the floor wasn't flesh. It bounced and rolled to my feet like a marble. In a moment where time seemed to freeze, I picked it up. It was a perfect porcelain eye, carved and etched better than any prosthetic I had ever seen. I looked up to see a single-eyed Molly, her skin coating the inside of her socket like some badly treated doll. My stomach rolled over inside of me. What the hell is that thing? Speaking aloud what I was thinking. A changeling, A very deceiving fake and a cruel imitation of life. Dorian began indifferently, as Molly began to flail against her. They are the creation of Jeddan, foul and imperfect creatures who have only prevented the degeneration of their race through claiming the beautiful and whole. My mind began to race. The madness of the situation and the screams of Molly, or rather the changeling, had started to make my head throb. So where is the real Molly? I asked desperately. They'll have taken her to the caves under the chaos, Dorian said calmly, as another lightning strike lit up her dark eyes. If you leave now, you might be able to get her before she's claimed. You'll need to bring this, she said, dangling the changeling in front of her. Even though I knew it wasn't human, my paternal instinct made me spring to grab the one-eyed baby and cradle it under my arm. What am I supposed to do with her? I asked, slightly unsettled by her handling of the child. You'll use her to bargain. They'll only reveal themselves to you that way. Your child will be of value to them, but not more than the tool they use to acquire her. These things require a lot of craft. She gestured to the door. Leave now. Go to the deepest level of the chaos. If she's still alive, you'll hear her cries to guide your way. I hope you have more luck than I did. With so much information to process and so little time, all I could utter to her was, "Thank you," as I grabbed my coat and ran out into the storm. It was raining hard. The changeling cried incessantly. Even with my knowledge, I instinctively tried to shield it from the rain the best I could. The lights flicked on in some of the houses I ran past as I held the screaming child. As the streetlights dissipated and the chaos unfolded in front of me, the only source of light would come from the inconsistent flashes of lightning that would illuminate the stone Goliaths I desperately clambered over. I was wading through the river of rock less than 5 minutes before I heard the first cries, faint and whistled through the wind. I heard her, my baby girl. I quickened my pace. In complete disregard for the unknown drops nestled between boulders, I leapt from rock to rock, clutching the impostor closely to my chest. Then I found it, a circular clearing which at its center held 3 great boulders, fallen into place to give the appearance of a great stone doorway leading into a black, endless abyss. A single cry echoed from the void. "Molly?" I shouted, but only thunder answered my call. I wish I brought a flashlight or a lighter, anything that would have let me see into the dark cavern. I had no way of seeing how deep or far it went. I didn't want to risk a fall unless there was no other option. I had to try, as Dorian said. "I have your child," I called out to the abyss, "and I know you have mine." No response. "I want to trade. I return what is yours, and you return what is mine," I shouted. I could feel the desperation creeping into my voice. Again, I heard Molly's cries echo out from the dark. I laid the changeling out on the stone. Its porcelain eye glistened in the moonlight. I realized I had no other option. I grabbed a loose stone and raised it above my head. "I'll kill it. I'll kill your creation if you don't bring me mine," I screamed as a sickening primal selfishness. It sickened me because I suddenly knew I would. If I couldn't have Molly, then they couldn't have this thing. A sudden guttural screech emanated from the darkness, an inhuman metallic scream that sounded like 100 forks being dragged across a chalkboard. "I'll do it," I yelled. The screams and cries of Molly from the cave seemed to sync with the abomination below me. "I'm going to give you till the count of 3, I said, my grip tightening on the rock. 1. Another hellish howl breaks from the dark. 2. The changeling looks up in a moment of terror. 3. A great crash of lightning strikes into a tree mere meters from where I was standing, blinding me with a light of sheer white for just a moment. As my vision clears, the rock still held aloft. I looked down onto the two green beady eyes. I immediately cast the rock aside and scooped Molly up into my arms. I don't know how long I sat there, quietly sobbing and whispering sweet comforts into Molly's ears. But as the rain began to soak through my outer layers, I got up and made my way home. I don't remember getting home at all, nor going to bed. All I remember is waking up on my sofa and Molly cradled in my arms. There were a few dying embers left in the fireplace. I could see the morning sun creeping through the gaps of my window shutters. For a brief, comforting moment, I thought I had just experienced the most terrible of dreams. However, this spell was shortly broken, as when I glanced to my table, a single porcelain eye stared back at me. I don't think I've had a proper night of sleep ever since this happened, and truthfully, I don't think I ever will. 6 years ago, I died in the stupidest way possible. There's a lake of sorts located in the outskirts of my town. The day that I died was a particularly chilly day, so the lake was frozen solid. My two best friends, who I now refuse to talk to, dared me to walk across the frozen lake. Doing so would result in them paying me a hefty amount of $40. I was 12 at the time, so you know damn well that I didn't think twice about this. So there I was right after school, walking across the frozen lake. Truth be told, it didn't seem like a bad idea at the time. Walking on the ice felt like walking on concrete. Then again, my friends were cheering me on the whole time, so I really couldn't hear the cracks that came from the ice. You can imagine how mortified I was when the ice collapsed. My heart stopped due to the sudden drop in temperature, and in that moment, the world faded away into the brightest shade of white, just pure white. I tried holding my hands up to my face, but I couldn't do so at all. In fact, I wasn't even inside my body at all. As the spiritual people say, all that was left of me was a big ball of light, known as my soul. "You're here early," a voice muttered. Who the voice belonged to, I'll never know. Was it God? I doubt it. Was it an angel? Maybe. But irregardless, this voice was deep and commanding, echoing throughout the entire void. It came from everywhere, yet nowhere at the same time. "Who are you?" I gasped. "Oh, I really shouldn't say." The voice spoke. "So you're here about a few decades early, but that's okay. That's fine. Because 14 minutes and 21 seconds from now, a cocky ER doctor will bring you back to life. Your mother will hold you in her arms, and your father will cry for the first time in over 15 years. Your friends will visit you in the hospital, but you won't really want them there. No, you'll just curse them out for 3 minutes straight. You won't go back to school until next Wednesday, and when you do go back, your biology teacher will give you a very nice box of chocolates. Very nice indeed." The voice spoke as if these events had already occurred. "How do you know about all this?" I asked. "Because I planned all of it," the voice answered. "I planned for you to wear Nike sneakers today, and I planned for you to grow an interest in the Olympics. You're a very good athlete right now, so I can already see that that decision has paid off very well." "So you planned out every part of my life?" I stuttered. "Even the parts that you don't think about," the voice answered. "So you planned out every argument that I've had with my mom?" I asked, horrified. "And I planned out every insult that you called her," the voice answered. "And you also planned out who I would be friends with?" I asked angrily. "Yep." Shocked is a very subtle way of describing how I felt. but as the voice continued to speak, I couldn't help but think of just one more question. Well, I said, if I'm not going to die today, then what's going to happen when I actually die? Oh, when you actually die? The voice asked. Well, the answer is actually quite simple. You'll be reincarnated as yourself, born in the same year and everything, and I'll just change another decision of yours. Maybe instead of planning for you to grow an interest in the Olympics, I'll have you grow an interest in Charles Dickens. Or maybe I'll have you grow an interest in the Titanic. Or maybe I won't even change that. Maybe I'll change where you sat on your first day of kindergarten. Or maybe I'll change what bus route you used to go to work. Bus routes? Charles Dickens? Kindergarten? Seriously? Why does that even matter? I asked. Because it all impacts your life, the voice bellowed. In your previous life, you chose to oversleep on a Sunday morning, which caused you to miss a flight that ended up crashing into the ocean. In the life before that, you woke up right on time. And in the life before that, you never even had to go on any flight, because I chose for you to have aerophobia. Every decision counts, the voice concluded, and the shade of bright white faded away, allowing me to watch my father as he uncontrollably cried. I'm writing to see if I'm crazy or not. No one at my job seems to believe me, but I know what I saw. I work at a movie theater as an usher. I spend all of my shifts checking theaters for people being assholes, sweep floors, take out garbage, the usual stuff. Depending on the movie release, my days can be boring with very little to do. Cast, yeah, staff is referred to as cast, and managers often spend the boring days just messing around and trying to stay sane. Sometimes we like to tell spooky stories to the new kids to creep them out. One story we have is about how, when the theater opened in 1991, a dude got shot in the lobby. It's a simple one, but telling teenagers that someone got shot can spook them. Another is Theater 12. Two managers had to fix a ceiling light in Theater 12 and experienced something spooky. No physical entities, hat men, or bed sheets. The air in the theater was just uneasy. One of them swore they heard talking but didn't see anyone else. Being how I like to be, I told one of the new kids a hodgepodge of the stories. I told them that a guy got shot on opening day in Theater 12, and his spirit haunts the theater to this day. Little fun to keep us sane. That's what I thought. The other night I was doing my normal closing routine. I was bum rushing to clean the theaters. I made my way down to Theater 12. The theater hadn't sold all day. It's common. Some movies do absolutely nothing and don't sell. So I went to clean. Or pretend to clean because there's nothing to clean. The second I entered the theater, the vibes felt off. The air just felt wrong. Is that the correct word? It felt wrong. I turned the corner to the rows of seats to see one person sitting and staring at the screen. It was a woman, maybe mid-30s. She was Asian, possibly Chinese. She just stared at the screen. Nothing was playing, but she was engrossed like there was something there. I cleared my throat. Ma'am, it's closing time. The woman blinked, like I broke a trance or something. Oh, she said. Sorry, I just couldn't get over this movie. It's so good. Clown in a cornfield was in the theater. I highly doubt that. It was the end of the night. I'm tired, and I want to clock out and go home. Being nasty to a woman in the wrong theater isn't going to do anything. Well, sorry, ma'am. Gotta go. She politely got up, collected her things. Purse, popcorn bucket, and cup. At least she had the common sense to do that at least. Her items were weird. The bucket and cup looked like one of the older cups and buckets the GM has up in the projector booth. Hadn't used those designs in years. Okay, so maybe she just likes vintage theater memorabilia. As said, it was the end of the night. I don't care, and she's hot. As long as she got the hell out. She handed me her ticket. Here, I'll give you a sweep. I didn't eat much of my popcorn. After that, she left. I tossed the ticket in my dustpan without thinking and went through and swept. She was right. Not much of a popcorn enjoyer. Didn't eat much at all. Easy clean. The can was empty too. Must have taken her stuff home with her. I cleaned the rest of the theaters in that hallway and listened to random YouTube videos. Afterwards, I went back into the lobby. My closing manager was cleaning the rest of the concession stand. "Everyone out?" he asked. "Yep," I say. "Hey, are you sure Theater 12 didn't sell today?" I asked. Manager grabbed the closing sheet, looked it over, and handed it to me. "Yeah, empty all day." I scratched my head in confusion. "Why, was someone in there?" "Yeah, some lady. Didn't see anyone leave that hallway?" "Just you, baby girl." I held up my dustpan, rifled through it, and pulled out her ticket. I examined it closely. The Silence of the Lambs. I showed it to my manager. She gave me this to save me a clean. We both examined it again. One thing stuck out. The date on the ticket. March 14th, 1991. We both stared at the ticket, then to each other, then down the hall to Theater 12. After that, I wouldn't go in that theater without anyone else present. Manager, co-workers, even customers. That theater really freaks me out now. No one believes me that I saw a ghost. My closing manager says I must have just found an old ticket under a seat. But I know one thing for sure. I refuse to be alone in Theater 12. I always heard that asking about Grandpa was forbidden. The moment I uttered the word grandfather, Dad would snap. His eyes darkened. His jaw clenched, and every time I heard the same thing. He's no longer part of this family, period. I only saw Grandpa twice as a child. I was too young to remember much. Just fragments. The smell of charred meat, smoke curling from his pipe bowl, and a silence that clung to the air like wet wool. The only thing I recall clearly is how enormous he seemed whenever he visited. Or maybe I was just too small. Mom would pull me away, quick and firm. When I turned 18 and moved to the city for college, I found myself digging through Dad's old things during a rare, quiet moment. Among bills and expired driver's licenses, I discovered a yellowed envelope. Inside was a crumpled letter sent from a town called Lodell, a speck on the map, 2 hours north. The return address read, George and Marilyn Arter. At first, the names meant nothing, but George brought back the smell of smoke. Looking back now, I don't know why I went there, but I've always been curious, and something pulled me toward that place. Forbidden fruit is sweet, right? So, during break, I decided to meet my grandfather. I rehearsed questions. Why he and Dad were estranged. What happened? But none of it would matter. Lodell was smaller than any town I'd seen. One gas station, one diner, one grocery store, and houses scattered along winding roads like fallen teeth. The last stretch from the bus stop, I walked. At the end of a gravel path framed by bare trees and silence stood a red wooden house. He opened the door before I could knock. "Good Lord Almighty," he boomed, grinning wide with crooked teeth. "Look who it is, my favorite grandson. God, it's good to see ya." Grandpa was massive. His frame barely fit the doorway. He wore a brown flannel shirt stretched over his gut, the collar stained, a thick pipe seemingly fused to his lips. His hug knocked the air out of me. Behind him stood Grandma. Her hair was neatly pinned, her sweater hanging loose, as if years of worry had whittled her down to bone. Her eyes met mine and didn't match her smile. They said, "What have you done?" Grandpa ushered me inside, clapping my back so hard I stumbled. The house smelled of smoke, meat, and something coppery brown. The furniture was old but sturdy, the kind that outlives generations. He gave me a tour, laughing and gesturing wildly, and I sat with them in the living room, dark from heavy curtains. Grandma brought me tea with trembling hands. The first few days were tolerable. Grandpa joked, smoked nonstop, and taught me wood carving. He told stories to neighborhood kids who trickled in after school, 2 or 3 at a time. He was what people call the life of the party, and he really was. I don't know how to explain it, but Grandpa had this magnetism. People just gravitated toward him. He was kind, genuine, funny. His life stories were fascinating, and he clearly loved the attention, his pipe never leaving his mouth. Everything seemed normal. Except for one thing, his appetite. He ate constantly, bacon by the pound, bread by the loaf, pies in single sittings. Once I watched him devour an entire rotisserie chicken and a pan of cornbread before dinner. He chewed loudly, wheezing, sweating, never stopping. Plates piled around him like building blocks, yet he always wanted more. Licking plates, sucking grease from his fingers, gulping tea by the liter, nearly choking on it. Grandma brought out plates piled with pork chops, sausages, whole chickens, gravy boats the size of bowls, and he inhaled it all, groaning with pleasure. His face gleamed with grease. He didn't chew so much as engulf, as if tasting was optional. "You always eat like this?" I asked, half joking. He grunted around his pipe and patted his belly. Big man needs big meals. I figured he just needed a lot of food, but not this much. All day he only ate and smoked, barely able to move from his chair, just sitting in the kitchen waiting for the next massive meal. Hell, I don't think I've eaten as much in my life as he did in one dinner. Still, evenings with him were fun, until the hunger returned. One night, Grandma caught me alone in the hall while Grandpa snored like a bear in the next room. "You need to leave," she whispered. Her face pale, lips cracked. "Well, he's asleep. Tomorrow, first thing." "But why?" She flinched at the sound of heavy footsteps. Grandpa emerged from the shadows, pipe smoldering, eyes unreadable. "Everything all right?" "Just telling him about my childhood," Grandma answered too quickly. Grandpa stared at us in silence, and for the first time I felt afraid. The only light was his burning pipe. The only sound, his labored breathing. He filled the hallway, his bulk swallowing the space. "This house has many stories," he finally rumbled before retreating to bed. I barely slept that night. Between Grandpa's snoring and the dread gnawing at me, leave in a hurry, but why? By morning, the fridge was empty. Grandpa sat at the table, licking his lips, breathing hard. "Where's that woman gotten to? Starving over here." Grandma returned with 3 bulging grocery bags and frantically unpacked them, cooking while Grandpa fidgeted, growling incoherently. I claimed I wasn't hungry. A lie. Watching him eat, devouring even the gristle, made me nauseous. Instead, I went to the store, chewing on Grandma's warning. Something about this was starting to scare me, especially one thought. How does he eat so much? At his age, that obese, Chain smoking? How was his heart still beating? At the store, the clerk and a woman were whispering, tense, glancing at the windows. Ben's lost another pig, the woman muttered. Sixth one. Coyote? Bear? The clerk asked vaguely. When's the last time you saw a coyote, let alone a bear, around here? Sorry, I cut in awkwardly. Animals are disappearing? You new here, kid? The woman sighed, recalling something grim. First pigs, then goats, chickens, even dogs. What's left is just bones. Gnawed, split open, like something sucked out the brains. But no one's seen an animal do it. No tracks, no blood. Suddenly I couldn't breathe. I was drenched in sweat. They didn't know what could do this, but I might. And Grandpa? He still laughed, smoked, told stories. Evenings he'd call me to the porch, where kids gathered like moths to his booming voice. One older girl, maybe 10, sat at his feet and asked, Mr. Arter, are you ever scared? He looked at her and smiled slowly. Only when the meat runs out, he said, laughing like it was a joke. The kids laughed too. I didn't. When I asked about the missing animals, Grandpa just chuckled through a mouthful of stew. Wild times, huh? Makes me feel young again. He played cards with me and the kids. Everyone adored him. But I grew uneasy around his bloated body, his yellow teeth grinning through smoke as he launched into another story. Too good, too vivid, too scary. The kids leaned in, wide-eyed, while Grandpa basked in their attention, until Grandma, shaking, announced, We're out of food, nothing left. No meat, no eggs, not even flour. We can't. Find more. Grandpa growled, pupils shrinking to pins. I'm starving. He didn't move from his chair. Even when we went to bed, he stayed in the kitchen. Around 3 a.m. I woke up thirsty and flicked on the kitchen light. Then nearly had a heart attack. Grandpa was still in his chair, trembling, staring at the same spot. His skin was pale, almost translucent, veins purple beneath. His pipe was gone. For the first time I saw him without it, and that alone made me want to crawl into a corner. At first I thought he was dead, but then he shook harder, sweat beading on his forehead. Grandpa, you okay? I whispered. Get me food, boy. His voice held no trace of the man I'd known. No warmth, just threat. Something not human. I'll go to the store in the morning. Just sleep, Grandpa. Get me food. He didn't look up. I edged past him, turning off the light. All night strange sounds came from below. Growls, wet slithering, the front door creaking. At dawn, Grandpa was gone, the door ajar. Grandma stood behind me, eyes red with fury and regret. Go, grandson, now. He won't be satisfied with store food. Pack your things and leave. But what's wrong with Grandpa? How can he eat so much? You don't want to know what happens when he stops eating. She turned to leave but froze at my next question. Why do you stay with him? If no one controls him, it gets much worse. That morning, the town buzzed with news. A boy had vanished overnight. Only bones were found. Cleaned, not a scrap of meat left. No animal could have done that, and I knew exactly what could. I returned to the house. Grandpa sat on the porch, pipe in teeth, smoke wreathing his head. His shirt was stained, worse than usual. He stared into nothing. Boy, he rasped, voice thick with smoke. Fetch me something from the store. Something was off that morning. His posture too rigid, eyes glassy, lips cracked, skin pale and swollen, like raw meat. I mumbled an excuse and went to pack. Then I heard them arguing. "The kids are coming tonight," he snarled. "They want stories." "No," Grandma said. "Not this time. I'll call the police. You won't do anything." Then she screamed, not in fear but rage. "I won't let you feed on them again." I backed away. I didn't want to know what that meant. Didn't want to see more. Dusk fell too fast. The kids arrived on foot, alone, drawn like moths. George waited on the porch, bloated, sweating, unable to rise. Blisters covered his hands. His jaw elongated. He still smiled, but not like before. Something inside him was pushing out. Grandma begged them to leave. "You don't understand," she wept. "This isn't a game. Go home." "Please, Mrs. Arter, just one story," the kids pleaded. "Get out, now," she hissed. "Let 'em be," Grandpa's voice growled from behind, making everyone jump. "Kids want stories." He shut the door after them. Grandpa swelled grotesquely. Glassy-eyed, he stared at them, his pipe forgotten. He didn't speak, couldn't stand. The kids giggled nervously in a semicircle. I watched helpless, knowing something terrible was coming. "Mr. Arter," one child said, "don't tell our parents we came, okay? They've banned us from going out, but we need your stories." "I won't tell," Grandpa gasped, clutching his chest. "Won't tell." Then I saw it, his shirt ripping, hands swelling, mouth unhinging wider than possible. He collapsed from his chair onto all fours. The kid screamed, so did I. His arms melted, fat dripping like candle wax. His distended belly dragged on the floor. Blisters erupted across his skin. God help me. His face slid into a wet, jagged grin of meat and fangs. Grandma stepped between him and the kids, gripping a fireplace poker, her eyes darting to me. "Run." "No more, George," she said. "If you want meat, take me." He didn't hesitate. One swift motion, her head vanished into his maw. The kids rushed the door, but it was locked. They pounded, shrieking. I stood frozen, praying this wasn't real. But it was. Grandpa, now a slithering mountain of hunger, gurgled, hissed, and dragged his bulk toward the children. I wish I could say I helped, but I couldn't. I vomited at the sounds, couldn't even look. Finally, I moved, bolting to the attic, heart hammering. I stayed there, shaking, gasping, as the house filled with the sounds of slaughter, chewing, crunching bones. One voice, then another, then silence. Sniffing, scratching, something huge lumbered down the hall. Sniffling, muttering. I pressed into the rafters, too afraid to cry. Hours stretched into centuries. Then a wet, slurping voice. "Boy, come back. Feed your grandpa. I smell you." I buried myself in dust and shadows, praying to disappear. I stayed until the silence returned and dawn crept in. I crept downstairs, stepping over bones and blood. Grandpa was gone. Only a greasy stain remained where he'd fallen. The house reeked of death. I vomited down my pants. Then I ran until the road turned to asphalt. Didn't stop even at headlights. I told no one, not the police, not the townsfolk. I don't know what happened after, where Grandpa went. I returned home, couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. I vomited, cried, had nightmares of that night. Months later at breakfast, I met Dad's eyes and asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" He stared into his coffee. I hoped you'd never go there, he said softly. You weren't supposed to know that address. Guess blood calls to blood. What does that mean? He looked up, eyes bitter. You're not my son. Silence fell like snow. I mean, you are my son. I raised you. I love you. But you're not mine. George brought you as a baby. Said he found you by the river. I didn't ask. Didn't want to know. But your real parents. What happened to them? He swallowed. George got hungry. That's all you need to know. And you, how did you live with him? We moved town to town keeping him fed, but it was never enough. When I was 16, we settled in Lodell. A month later, he brought you. I escaped with you. He stayed for 18 years. Now I live with that truth. Try to forget, but some nights I wake tasting ash and smoke. I hear news reports, missing animals, missing people. I lock the windows. The guilt eats me alive. Those kids, I knew. I could have stopped it, could have spoken up, but I was scared. And that, like the nightmares, will haunt me forever.